In 1875, a girl named Jeannie Louise Calment was born in a small town in France. She would eventually pass away at the verified age of 122, becoming the oldest recorded human in history. To put the sheer scale of her lifespan into perspective, she was 14 years old when the Eiffel Tower was built. She was 39 when World War I broke out, and she was 94 years old when Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon. Most of us assume that reaching a century of life requires a miraculous roll of the genetic dice. We think extreme longevity is simply inherited. To test that assumption, researchers conducted a massive demographic analysis known as the Danish Twin Study. By tracking over 2,800 pairs of twins between 1870 and 1900, scientists were able to isolate the exact role DNA plays in the aging process. This pie chart illustrates the final quantitative conclusion. Genetics dictate only about 20% of an average human's lifespan. The massive 80% majority is influenced by the surrounding environment and daily lifestyle choices. This data suggests for the vast majority of the population, the trajectory of aging is heavily shaped by the specific conditions and habits we occupy. Reaching 100 is less a result of chance and more a result of optimizing external variables. In 2003, National Geographic explorer Dan Buettner set out to locate the highest concentrations of centenarians on Earth. This map tracks his targets: Sardinia in Italy, Okinawa in Japan, Loma Linda in California, Icaria in Greece, and the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. These isolated pockets are known as the blue zones. By cross-referencing the daily routines of the people living in these distinct cultures, Buettner's team distilled their shared habits into a repeatable framework. Let's start with Pillar 1, the hardware. The centenarians in these regions rarely step foot in a commercial gym to lift weights or run marathons. Instead, their environments demand constant, low-intensity natural movement. An Okinawan home, for instance, features very little furniture, forcing residents to stand up and sit down on the floor multiple times a day. Then there is the fuel. Their diets lean heavily into a plant slant. Instead of large portions of meat, they primarily sustain themselves on whole grains, tubers, and various types of beans. And they restrict the total intake. Watch how this diagram models the stomach filling up. The Japanese follow a concept called hara hachibu, meaning they deliberately stop eating the moment they reach 80% capacity. Decades of clinical trials demonstrate that this exact kind of routine caloric restriction actively slows the biological aging process. Many discussions regarding these regions highlight the daily consumption of red wine as a primary factor. However, that data is now considered outdated. The latest medical consensus indicates that zero alcohol is the healthiest baseline. The cardiovascular benefit in red wine comes from an antioxidant called resveratrol, which you can get by simply eating grapes. But keeping the body physically functional requires a psychological reason to actually use it. That brings us to Pillar 2, the software. In Okinawa, there is no strict concept of retirement. They operate on ikigai, a reason for being. Having a dedicated life purpose, even something as simple as dedicating years to mastering an intricate craft, has been shown to extend life expectancy by up to 7 years. Without a mental anchor, the body is highly vulnerable to chronic stress. When stress hormones are constantly elevated, they act as an accelerator for nearly every age-related condition, from diabetes to heart disease. To counteract this, centenarians engineer daily routines to intentionally downshift. As you can see in this photograph of an elderly Okinawan woman deep in prayer, cultures in the blue zones schedule mandatory stress relief. Icarians take afternoon naps. Adventists practice daily prayer. Sardinians gather for daily happy hours. By programming these predictable mental release valves into their day, they stop chronic stress from quietly eroding their physical hardware over time. A perfectly tuned body and mind still need an operating environment to survive. Humans are pack animals, bringing us to Pillar 3, the network. Look closely at this image of a multi-generational group standing together in a circle. Regular attendance in a faith-based or tight-knit social community up to 4 times a month directly correlates with adding 4 to 14 years of life. They also prioritize immediate family. Committing to a life partner extends lifespan by an average of 3 years, and residents regularly choose to live with or very close to their aging parents. Sociological data proves that behaviors are highly contagious. Loneliness, obesity, and smoking spread through social groups just as easily as happiness. Blue Zone residents naturally curate the right tribe, a circle of close friends committed to the exact same healthy routines. It is practically impossible to maintain the hardware and software over an entire century without a surrounding network of people actively normalizing those choices. Replicating the lifestyle of an isolated Greek islander or an Okinawan farmer isn't entirely realistic for someone living in a modern metropolis, but the Blue Zone framework can be artificially engineered into an urban society. This skyline belongs to Singapore, the region researchers have identified as an emergent sixth Blue Zone. Singapore systematically forced healthy hardware onto its population through infrastructure and economics. The government subsidizes healthy food while heavily taxing junk food and personal vehicles. They intentionally designed the city to mandate daily walking. They also incentivized the network. If a citizen chooses to purchase a home within 500 yards of their aging parents, the government grants them a substantial tax break. This line graph tracks the result of those policies. By aggressively applying the principles of longevity to modern urban planning, Singapore achieved a 25-year upward trend in its citizens' average life expectancy. Reaching 122 years of age remains an extreme biological anomaly. Yet reaching 100 has become a predictable outcome of deliberate system design, an architecture of movement, mindset, and community that can be integrated into modern life anywhere in the world.